Good morning, all. Good morning, dear partners, colleagues, and listeners. It is a really big privilege to welcome you all to this MONDIACULT 2025 side event dedicated to museum navigating crisis through cultural rights. The themes raised by MONDIACULT, the right to culture and crisis and culture as foundation for peace, play important role in museum work with society. Museums are not only guardians of heritage, they are platforms for dialogue, inclusion, and resilience. They embody the rights to culture for every individual, regardless of social, economic, or national origin. Since 2020, the Latvian Museum Association has been working to encourage museum professionals to pay attention to broad understanding of SDG, including these responsibilities through trainings, compiling best practice and developing that database of sustainable development goals. This database clearly demonstrates the role of museums in engaging communities, ensuring access to culture for everyone, and promoting dialogue on complex and painful issues. In this way, museums not only preserve heritage, but also help society build resilience and readiness of overcome crises. Concrete example is the 2024 initiative that we made in cooperation with our partners, British Council Latvia, with the Library Association of Latvia. That was Project V for our community. Through trainings and small local projects, museum and library professionals fostered conversations between divided groups and created positive change at the community level. This is how cultural institutions contribute directly to peace building. International cooperation also plays a crucial role. And there important is cooperation with UNESCO, also from 2020. Within UNESCO participation projects, we have paid particular attention to the role of museums and libraries in localizing SDGs and also to resilience and peace. Just in this year, together with our partners from Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Moldova, Georgia, UK, and also Ukraine, we organized an international conference in Lviv, Ukraine, where museums and libraries shared their experience of preserving heritage and building resilience in the midst of military threats. These examples remind us that museums are not passive institutions. They are active contributors to peace building and recovery in time of crisis. Our ability to do this work is strengthened by partners and collaborations. I would like to thank our long-term partner, Henry McGhie, with whom we have created many educational events and projects for Latvian and also for other country museum professionals. This successful partnership has also led to our participation in Horizon Europe Project Touched, coordinated by University of Valencia, together with partners from ICROM, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, Serbia, Belgium, and Germany. We are working to reinforce the role of museums as drivers of cultural rights, peace, and resilience across Europe using our collections. Museums are more than place of memory. They are agents of change and resilience and peace. And we need to continue to work together so that the rights to culture is not abstract principle, but lived reality for all communities in time of peace and also in time of crisis. So therefore, I really wish you to have successful and great this webinar. And I give floor to our moderator, Henry McGhie.
Thank you, Zane, and I'll just share my screen. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's great to have the opportunity to be here as part of the MONDIACULT pre-conference and to have a contribution with my fantastic long-term partners from the Latvian Museums Association. So I run a consultancy called Curating Tomorrow, based in the UK, but working in many countries. And I'll just say a few words about our event today and also by way of introduction. So I'll make some remarks and then I'll introduce a new guide which I've produced earlier this year on agency, participation and solidarity under my Curating Tomorrow work. Then we will hear from Maya from the Janusz Lipke Memorial in Riga about communicating difficult heritage. Then we will hear from Liliane from Valencia to hear some examples from their museum on working with cultural rights and gender equality. Then we will hear from Martina Gastaldello from ICCROM about the enjoyment of cultural rights by everyone. Then we will have some questions and time for discussion, hopefully. So I will go through this and I'll try to be fairly quick. So if we think, well, what roles can museums and other cultural institutions play in promoting and creating peaceful, resilient communities? As we heard from Zane, that we try not to think of museums just as passive actors or as storehouses, but as catalysts for different and better futures. So what roles can they play before, during, and after times of crisis? Because the needs are different. And how can cultural rights guide our decisions and actions at all times? And so we can say that the context is sustainable development, trying to address the many social, environmental, and economic challenges that we see around the world. I just put them across the top of my screen as the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But how can we make sure that we address these challenges together, both in the sense of making sure that when we try to answer one challenge, we don't just create another one? And also together in the sense of how can we collaborate and work in partnership within our sector, with other sectors, and across society. But we have to say that the Sustainable Development Goals are not on track. Old problems remain and new challenges emerge. So this is a big problem. But if we think of cultural rights, sorry, this is a really long quote from Farida Shahid, the former Special Rapporteur, basically as the rights of each person individually and with others to develop and express their humanity, their worldview, and the meanings they assign to their existence, and to develop these through values, beliefs, and so on. I won't read the whole thing. But it's important to say that cultural rights do not live in a box separate from other rights. All rights are connected. Each right is an access point to support other rights, for a kind of universe of rights, for a rights respecting culture and a rights respecting society. And so I'll just say some words to introduce this new open access guide I've written. And I wrote it really because I can see some kind of problems, if I can say it that way. Cultural institutions often don't understand or are not very confident in working with current challenges. But I would say that together we stand and divided we fall. We are much stronger together than when we are divided. When we stand up for others when we see they need it, we lift ourselves and our work up. The guide introduces the context of sustainable development and its many challenges. How culture and sustainable development are related, because culture is part of sustainable development. It's not just an enabler, it's an integral part of it. Human rights and environmental goals guide sustainable development, and they are also very much rooted in our culture and how we see the world and how we relate to it. A common thing that we hear from the previous MONDIACULT was the idea of culture as a global public good. So there's a section in there about understanding common concerns and public goods, because it's sometimes talked about more than it is understood. There's a section around monitoring and reporting culture and participation, and how we can use the SDGs and how we can use cultural rights and the international agreements around them to inform what it is we measure and value, and to look at strengthening our focus and collective action, how we can work together more concretely, how we can accelerate our support for sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals for people, planet, and prosperity. So, what is it we might think of when we consider cultural rights and how we might monitor them, or possible targets for a culture goal? My suggestion would be that it should include something around the protection, preservation, conservation, and development of cultural resources. How we protect and we enable access, participation, and contribution to culture for everyone. These are basic rights. How we focus on the collective dimensions of participation, so it is not an audience made up of individuals. How do we value the things that people do together? How do we protect freedom of expression and the right to information? How do we ensure quality lifelong education? Education is not just about school. And how do we monitor and report lifelong learning more effectively? Because it's not really that well monitored in the current SDGs. And because we say that rights are connected, all of these are a gateway to support people to contribute to the public affairs, you know, to the life of the community more broadly. Culture is not separate from other activities. I'll just give some examples. So, for instance, how might we use culture and heritage, learning from the past, to address current and future challenges, to challenge poverty, hunger, and persecution wherever we see them? How might we learn from places which have had to, unfortunately, learn the lessons from terrible disasters in the past, but we see that the needs are very different over time. In times of crisis or soon after, people need opportunities for distraction, almost to forget. But as time goes on, we need to remember, otherwise we run the risk of repeating the mistakes and the challenges of the past. And how can we think of the different bits of culture which are more public, which are more like a public good or a common good? And I just give the example here of open air processions to do with trade unions, workers, and solidarity, and how that works. And the guide gives a simple kind of 10-point framework. I try to be as practical as possible. It's just to help you. If you find it useful, great. If you have better ideas, also great. But the most important thing is that we connect our work with the world around us. And so I will stop the share now, and we will pass now to Maya.
So, hi, hello. Thank you for inviting me here. I will share my screen. Just a moment. So, yes, my name is Maya, and I work in Janis Lipke Memorial. And we are dealing with difficult, sometimes it is called also dark heritage. And we have this, realized that the art and culture is the best way how to communicate it. For those who don't know, Janis and Johanna Lipke are the righteous among the nations, and they were the first ones named, given this title from Israel, and they saved the most Jewish people here in Latvia during the Nazi occupation times, around 50 people. And he had no diplomatic passports or no factories and huge money. He had his own resources, like mind and belief that we should do better. We shouldn't betray our Jewish neighbors. And we are a private museum, quite small, but with huge ambitions and great mission. Let's make the world a better place. And this is our team. Back in 2009, the creators of this space. And we are created by one of the best architects here in Latvia, Zaga Gaile, together with theater people, scenographers, artists. So we can say for sure that our museum already is a piece of art dedicated to this story, dedicated to Lipke's family. And when you come here, the default experience is already connected with the artistic way of approaching history. But we do not stop there. We also collaborate with different kinds of artists. We started our collaboration with a writer. She's famous for her work with literature with kids. For kids, and she created this story for children, Puika Arsuni, boy and his dog. And she kind of cuts down our story in a simpler way, approachable for kids, and not only. And also she tells the story of Janis Lipke through the eyes of his youngest son. So this is approachable. And we also invited quite famous illustrator to create these illustrations that helps to bring the story closer to the smallest of our citizens. And this book started a chain reaction, actually. Also, the movie was created, dedicated to this story. Film director Davis Simonis, who was already famous of his works dedicated to difficult topics, to so-called dark heritage. And he created the movie The Mover, Tavs Nakts, Father Night, if you translate it directly from Latvian. And it did amazing things. A lot of Latvian citizens watched this movie. The last number that I know is 40,000, which is a good number for for the Latvian movie in Latvian language here. And it brought the conversation about dark past, about Holocaust, about Riga at that time, and decisions that people did. Back on kind of dinner table. It was dinner table talk now. And another lovely thing that happened because of the book, it's the theater, a very special theater company, Theater of Istaba, or Room Theater. And they also took the story and created a theater performance, again for younger kids. They are using objects and only one actor is present, but the reactions from kids are amazing. We decided that kids shouldn't leave the theater, like our museum, right after the theater. And I go and speak with these kids, and the questions that they give are amazing. One of my favorites is why a Lipke story is still important for us today. And it was a little kid from 3rd grade, yeah, so 9-10 years old, but the art opens up and allows us to talk about deep, important things, but it starts as an art experience. And now we are being very modern, and also asking partners from IT segment to come and help us and to create this digital solutions, how to talk with younger generation, with youth about these difficult times. And we got very lucky. It started as collaboration in Riga Film Festival, but ended up with amazing VR experience, Lipke's Banka, where you can put your VR glasses on and go into this Banka. And we also were very lucky because the team of researchers heard about this experience, came to us and asked the kids, asked the young people, what do you think? What do you feel about what you just saw or heard? And the answers were amazing. And we are realizing that for younger people, the technology is very important. So also that aspect comes into play. And sometimes they feel that they appreciate reality more if they have seen first the technology. Yeah, like it's an interesting thing that we kind of see here. And we do not stop here. Right now, my colleagues are in Berlin presenting another digital solution, another way how to work with the dark history and bring it to younger people. So we are not stopping there. We are working and using art and culture as help to kind of make these, I call them bridges of empathy. And that is kind of our key solution, how to put this dark history again in our thoughts, to be brave enough to tackle them, to touch them, and maybe, I hope, of course, we are all dreamers here, make a better future and make a society that makes better decisions in the crisis that will come. Maybe, maybe not, but they will be ready for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Maya. And we will pass next to Lilian from the National Museum of Ceramics in Valencia in Spain. Please, Lilian, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone. Okay, I think you can see the presentation now. So before starting, I would like to thank Zane and Henry for their introduction, and also the Latvian Museum Association for their organization, and also the Spanish team of the Project Touch of the University of Valencia for inviting us to present this project and giving us this opportunity. Thank you very much. So before starting, I would like just to say some words of our museum. It's a museum located in Valencia in Spain. It's a public museum, it's a state museum that is housed in, we will see it later, in an ancient palace, okay? So it's a ceramics museum, but also an art decorative museum and like a house museum. It's very special and complicated to communicate it. So before presenting our project linked to gender equality, I would like to mention two cultural rights plan in Spain. One of them is the one of the Ministry of Culture that has been just published this year, and that is organized in 6 strategic priorities. I will just focus on the second one, addressing contemporary challenges from a cultural perspective. And each strategic priority has areas of action, a series of areas of action. One of them is gender equality, with this series of measures, guaranteeing equal opportunities, raising awareness and recognizing female creators and artists in all their diversity, promoting training and knowledge with an intersectional gender perspective, and preventing and addressing gender-based violence in the cultural sector. The second one, cultural rights plan, is the one of the Institute of Culture of Barcelona, the city of Barcelona, and it was published in 2022, and it was organized in 9 measures. The 5th one is called directly cultural feminist culture, and it's the right to a diverse and equal culture. So for me, this right is important because it not only refers to equality for contemporary female creators, artists, and cultural professionals, and measures that affect professional careers, training, equal opportunities, and so on in the cultural sector. But in the specific field of museum, this means offering cultural, because I have something that is, offering cultural heritage from a more critical point of view and the perspective of equity and social justice. So for me, it is important because it focuses on collection also, not only on people, equality for people, but offering a new perspective, a new discourse on collections. And I'm going to illustrate this idea with some project that we have, that we lead in the museum in different fields. The first field is the education one, because we started in this field introducing the gender perspective in education since 2014. So we have a quite long experience in that way. And first, we introduced in the educational program guided tours with gender perspective for students aged between 13 and 18. And then we extended these guided tours to adult public. And more recently, we added to this program the workshop "My Room" of illustrious women, in which for students aged between 6 and 12, and we work on a room called the Room of Illustrious Men, with 5 portraits of Valencian men. And we introduce 6 women, that are present in the permanent collection. And the students have to reinterpret or rebuild with a mock-up of the room, adding these 6 or 5 women that we have previously introduced during the guided tour. Then in the field of temporary exhibitions, we have organized several exhibitions to rediscover women from history and art history. And also we have organized micro exhibitions to celebrate the International Women's Day. I show some examples here. For example, a micro exhibition on Hannah Hyatt Huntington, which was the wife of Archer Milton Huntington, the founder of the Hispanic Society. And there was a link between the Hispanic Society and the Museum of Ceramics of Valencia through the founder of our museum. And we presented this artist that was unknown in Valencia. We have 2 big sculptures of her in big avenues, but almost no one knew that these sculptures were from Hannah Hyatt. So that was very, very interesting to rediscover this artist. Another example is we have this portrait of Madame du Barry, the Countess du Barry, and we wanted to highlight her role in promoting the arts and in promoting also a new taste that was neoclassicism. And a third example is this artist from Valencia who had to exile after the Civil War in Spain in 1939, and she focused her work in the traditional Mexican costume. She exiled with her family to Mexico, as many Spanish artists. In this field of temporary exhibition, we want also to make visible women linked to the museum history and collections, especially Mrs. Amelia Cuñat Monleón, who was the wife of the museum founder, Manuel González Martí. We recently, this year, we organized an exhibition in which we wanted to highlight the donors of the museum. The museum's collection are formed by acquisitions, but also by many donations. And of more than 1,000 documented donors, more than 400 of them are women. In some cases, these donations were made by a couple of a woman and a man. And we have also a lot of numerous anonymous women that appear in historical records only as wife of or widow of. So that was very interesting also to make research in this field of museum documentation. And then we have also projects of documentation and research, networking project like this one called Rereadings, Museum Itineraries from a Gender Perspective, in which the museum participates since 2017 with other 18 Valencian museums.
and with the support or the coordination of the University of Valencia and the support also of the provincial government of Valencia. The aim is to generate new discourses which will allow visitors to reflect on the role of women, patriarchal myths, and social inequality between men and women. And we do that by a selection of some works that are exhibited in the permanent exhibition, so that people can do this tour on the museum or do it virtually through the website of this project. Then I will mention two other projects from the museum, always in this field of research and documentation. This one is the Dos Aguas Palace as a domestic space, a gender and class perspective. This project wants to focus on the building that houses the museum. As I told before, it's a palace. It's a palace that belonged to the Marquis of Dos Aguas. And the aim of the project is to provide an account of how the palace residents spend their daily lives and describe their relation to the domestic spaces. It also aims to situate this account within an historical and social context, Spain and Valencia, during the second half of the 19th century. This new discourse is generated from an intersectional approach, focusing on two aspects, gender and class. The concept of gender will be used as a tool to analyze the relationship between space and gender, among other issues. And social class was also an important issue for us. And it's an additional criterion that will be considered during the observation of different spaces and their inhabitants. The project aims to unmask the history of servants, attendants within the domestic spaces, like doormen, coachmen, nursemaid, and other at the service of the family. And finally, age is a third aspect to be examined. Childhood and all related aspects are likewise absent in the palace room, as it is very often we find this in the historical museums. And finally, we have an ongoing project that is not visible already because it is not on the website, but we are also doing research on the women artists that are in the museum collection. So this project aims to document, research, and promote the women artists featured in the museum collection. Most of them are ceramists, but we also have painters and sculptors. And the ultimate goal is to create a specific section on the museum website to give visibility to this often little-known artist. And this could be also the basis for the organization of future temporary exhibitions. So with this last slide, I want to connect with the current museum definition approved by ICOM in 2022 to link to this idea that learning about the overlooked history of women, interpreting collection from an intersectional perspective, highlighting the diversity of cultural heritage and depatriarchalizing. I'm sorry for this word, but I checked, and it's also used in English as in Spanish. And decolonizing collection are also cultural rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liliane, and thank you to all our speakers for their interventions so far. And now we will move next to Martina from ICROM to talk about museums and cultural rights. Please, Martina.
Thank you, Harry. Good morning, everyone. I am Martina Gastaldello, and I work with ICROM, the International Center for the Study of the Preservation and the Restoration of Cultural Property. I want to use this space today to initiate a conversation that I hope will continue on the role that it's quite important that human rights play in shaping the work of cultural institutions. So if we think of museums, libraries, galleries, and archives. This week, I've been participating in the conference Collections 2030 and Beyond that we have organized at ICROM with our partners in the context of the program Our Collection Matter. The conference engages professionals from around the world who are active in different sectors in a discussion on how heritage collections can be activated for sustainable development. And it does that by looking at the 5 pillars of the 2030 agenda. So people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And I'm mentioning the conference because while it's still ongoing, what I listened so far was very inspiring for me, and somehow it also helped me to shape the content of my contribution today. This is because all the speakers come from different professional backgrounds, but they stress the same concept. And this is what I want to bring today to you. The need to put people at the center of collections. The need to empower people to take an active role in designing, but also reimagining collections. And at the same time, to find new ways to ensure that collections can be truly inclusive and accessible for all. So I want to use this brief space today to really build on the momentum that I think was created by the conference to remind all of us that human rights should be at the core of the work of cultural institutions. You may have heard about the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, that's also called ICESC. This was one of the first international human rights treaty that was adopted by the UN General Assembly after the Second World War. And let's look at Article 15. That it's one of the it's the article that recognizes the right of everyone to take part in cultural life. That includes also the enjoyment of heritage collections in cultural institutions. So if we look at these rights, let's focus on the term everyone, because this is very important. We live nowadays in a society that is more and more diverse, made up by people of different ages, different genders, abilities, ethnicities, languages, and so on. But despite the diversities, all of them should be able to access and to participate fully in all aspects of cultural life in conditions of equality and without any discrimination. And cultural institutions can really play an important role in this. But how can they do that in practice? So first, I just want to clarify that cultural institutions have duties towards individuals, and under the framework of international human rights law, we use the categorization of duty bearers to refer to the state, so to cultural institutions, to museums, whereas individuals are called right holders because they are the ones who enjoy and who benefits from human rights. So cultural institutions must take concrete measures to ensure the participation of all individuals in cultural life, of course, always respecting the individual choices, cultural choices of people. So how can museums facilitate the enjoyment of cultural life for all individuals? The answer lies in what we call the AAAQ framework. It's a framework that was developed by the Committee of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. That is the treaty body that monitors the implementation of the convention. If we apply this framework to the work of museums, this means ensuring that museums, but also the heritage collections that they host, are available, accessible, culturally appropriate, and also when museums, for example, develop and implement educational programs, that these programs are of a good quality. So let's take a brief look at each of these 4 elements. The first element of the AAAQ framework is availability. And this means that cultural goods and services like museums and collections, art in general, should be sufficiently available. This is also the same for all the type of heritage, like intangible cultural goods, but also nature, but also public spaces like parks, like streets, where art can be brought to. So in short, like just a sufficient availability in a sufficient quantity. Then the second element of the triple AQ framework is accessibility. And this element actually has different sub-elements because we talk about physical accessibility, financial accessibility, information or communication accessibility, and lastly, non-discrimination and equal treatment. So physical accessibility, here we can think about people who live in hard to reach or rural areas. So it's important that museums and collections are within physical reach for everyone. And this means also facilitating access for older people, like older persons, persons with disabilities, to name a few. Then financial accessibility, this means that when there are groups in society or people that are economically disadvantaged or lower socioeconomic status, the states and the museum should take some measure, and there are some actually already a lot of good practices to facilitate free entrances or specific reductions, like culture card that allows specific group to be able to go to the museums, even though they cannot afford it financially. Information and communication accessibility is also quite important because people speak different languages. If we look at persons with disability, they may have impairments that maybe require them to have a sign interpreter or to read in Braille if someone is blind. So it's important that people can seek, they can receive, and they can share information in a language of their choice. And finally, non-discrimination and equal treatment. This is in general one of the most important principles in international human rights law. And it means that no one should be excluded from accessing museums and from enjoying collections on the grounds of their ethnicity, their language, their religion, or their ability, and many other personal characteristics. And of course, like a first step in this regard is really to recognize that in the society there are diverse cultural identities and to promote this diversity as well. So we've seen so far the first two elements of the triple AQ framework. We've seen availability and accessibility. And then the third and last A is cultural accessibility or also appropriateness. This means that this right should be realized in a way that is appropriate and suitable to a given cultural context. So if we think about minorities, indigenous people, museums need to respect their culture and their cultural rights, and so heritage collections should be appropriate and should reflect the past and the specific culture of a group. And here I also want to mention the principle of consultation and participations, because consulting with individuals, with minorities, with indigenous people is essential to ensure that the collections really reflect their story and their past. And lastly, the fourth element of the framework is the Q, that refers to the quality. And here, it's not so much about the quality of the collections, but rather, for example, museums offer a lot of educational activities, if we think about young people or children, but also adults. So these educational programs should be of a good quality. That, of course, also means to be implemented by professionals who know what they talk about. So in order for museums to adjust the activities to the different needs, it's very important to know which persons and which communities require special protection. And I can provide a list, but it's not exhaustive. But just to name a few persons and community to which that we need to pay attention to, this can be women, children, older persons, persons with disabilities, ethnic and linguistic minorities, migrants, refugees, stateless person, and so on. So this is really an invitation, if you are cultural institutions, to reflect on the extent to which your work aligns to this triple AQ framework. And of course, there is always space for improvement, but also recognizing that you may not be able to do all of this alone. Partnership with different actors is crucial, also because sometimes aligning to this framework requires having available financial resources, but also technical expertise. And I just want to conclude by mentioning the principle of universality, that it's very much connected to this, because this is also what these elements remind us. So universality means that all human beings have equal human rights, just because they are human. So it doesn't really matter where they live and what personal particular characteristics they have. But we also live in a world now where the principle of universality is unfortunately increasingly under attack. So we can all redouble and increase our efforts to defend the universality of cultural rights by promoting cultural diversity. And to use the words of the UN Special Rapporteur in the field of cultural rights, cultural diversity is as necessary for humankind as biodiversity is for nature. I will conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. And so I'll just make a few comments, and then we'll move to questions. I think just a few things to remember for our listeners are that sustainable development ultimately is a human rights-based program. Often people think that sustainability or sustainable development is just about using resources carefully, and that's not really correct. So if we think that the Agenda 2030 has the 3 universal values about human rights and the human rights-based approach, as we've talked about today, about the principle of leave no one behind, which means we start our activity with those who are currently most underserved by society. That helps to guide our decisions. And also the principle of gender equality and women and girls empowerment. And if we can always remember these 3 principles, it really helps to guide our work. But also when we talk about culture in the sustainable development sense, culture is a really complicated word. It means different things to different people. It might be thought of in the very narrow sense, the very elite sense, as the very high points of human creativity. Or there's another sense in which it is taken to be very, very broad about everything. And that can be a bit hard to get to make into a policy agenda. Or if we think about culture as this somewhere in the middle about creativity and education and empowerment and participation and sharing and shaping our ideas together. And kind of lastly, the comment I'd make is that culture and heritage can be used to drive people apart rather than to bring them together. And when they're used to drive them apart, it's going in the wrong way of sustainable development. So I think if we always remember these, that culture is evolving, that people and communities are both producers as well as consumers of culture. And so I think I'll open for our 3 speakers, and I'll just ask you to say a few words in turn, Maya, Lilian, and Martina, about how can people get started with working with cultural rights? What do you think the first step would be? And I'll turn first to Maya, please.
Well, first of all, I guess we have to open the minds of people so they realize that culture is something that they have rights to. Because as soon as the crisis kicks in, especially financial crisis, the culture sometimes is the first that is cut off and treated as luxury thing, despite the fact that actually this is something that is crucial for our identity, how we kind of have the sense of belonging somewhere. And we should nourish these feelings, high or everyday culture, it doesn't matter. Like, we should see and acknowledge it. We should recognize it and stop kind of cutting it off as some kind of luxury, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Maya. Lilian, please.
Okay. Can you hear me? Yes.
We hear you well.
Okay. Yes. Yes, I think I agree with Maya with what she said, that culture is always, at least in Spain, I think in many other countries, the last thing we think about when in periods of crisis, and it at us always financial problems and personal problems always also. But speaking as a museum curator, I think museums have also the duty to work on sense. I don't know if we say sensibilize, make sensible that culture belongs to everyone, and that museum can link together cultural heritage with people. And I think that after the COVID crisis, we, at least in our museum, we become more aware that we had to work more with community, with the people who are near the museum, and to be really a service, a public service, like could be a hospital or a school. And I think it's people have to see museum like a public service, and for me it's very important.
Yeah, thank you. That's Lillian. That's a great intervention. And Martina, please.
So when you ask how can people start working with cultural rights, I can address this question from the perspective of the right holders, actually from the people themselves, because a cultural life is so rich. It includes so many things, like the ways of life, music, literature, all the type of communication, religion, so many things, that I think the first point is to be curious and to be open and to explore all these ways of life of other people, because in international law, the right to enjoy cultural life means not just enjoying my own group cultural heritage, but also the cultural heritage of other people. So it is about recognizing and accepting diversity in society, like the rich cultural diversity that makes up our world, and also promoting this cultural diversity, and for people to really engage between different groups, to be curious, to explore the ways of living and the culture of others, to participate in it. So I think promoting this exchange between different groups is a first step, and always being aware of what does it mean to be equal, what does it mean, how can discrimination happen. Also, if you are aware, you can also try to avoid it and to really respect the right of everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Martina. And I think I would just make a few remarks that when we think about about cultural life, it has sort of different aspects about the right to access it in the first place. Who can access cultural life? Who can take part in cultural activities? And the last part, who can contribute to the cultural life of the community? And we heard earlier in the week from the Special Rapporteur at the Collections 2030 conference about the importance of lifting up the cultures and cultural practices of minorities who are often underrepresented in our cultural institutions. It makes the cultural institutions more relevant and meaningful to society, for all of society. And then the second question I have, we just have a few minutes, but if one or two of you want to offer about why should we work with cultural rights in cultural institutions? So who would like to go first, please?
I can go first. Please,
Martina.
Because they contribute to peace. And I'm saying this as we've heard at the ICROM conference this week about how cultural institutions can really play an important role in fostering peace. there are a lot of conflicts at the moment, but in addition to armed conflict, there are also many situations where there are natural disasters, migratory crises, and cultural institutions can become a space for people to heal, to gather, to discuss, to engage, like a safe place, even when outside there is a war. So I think this is a reason, and also because cultural institutions are really very important to preserve the identity, like they are at the core of the people identity. They are a great bridge between the past and the future, and of course the present. So they can also offer for their collections a lot of inspirations for the future. And I think especially for young people today, it's they should engage to try to seek innovative solutions, to partner and to dialogue, to identify some ways to move forward and to address crises that our world is facing.
Thank you, Martina. Maya, Liliane, would you like to?
Yeah, I can continue on that, because we can see now in Ukraine, for example, there are many social media outlets that show you how Ukrainians are dealing with the stress, with the horror of war, with some desperate times. They create art, actually. They are talking through art who they are, how they feel. So it's a language, actually, also how we can treat culture. And also it helps us, we all know that there are times when we dehumanize other people. So the culture, I would say, helps us dehumanize, like go up, like upside down. They are not dehumans. When you learn about different kind of cultures, then you see a human, not just some enemy or whatever the propaganda, for example, is saying to you.
Yeah, thanks, Maya. Liliane, did you want to add something?
Yes, beside what Martina and Maya said, I would like to add also this idea of well-being and health also. A lot of articles and papers have demonstrated that arts and culture in general are good for people. I mean, they really help to feel people better, and they have been used in during crisis and after crisis. So there is a lot of project now in UK since very a long time, but also in other countries, also in Valencia, that are using museums and cultural institutions as places of well-being and to feel people better, and to also to create a more sustainable city also, yes, as I want to.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I think I would add as well that I mean, cultural spaces, they can also be spaces that cause trauma, for particular people and communities. And when we consider them and we think about their realities and experiences, and we kind of try to address them in a sensitive way, it also helps to make our organizations more relevant, and actually to help not to be part of the crisis. And I think we're pretty much at the end of time, but I would ask Zani just to add a closing word from the Latvian Museums Association, please. And to thank our speakers for your fantastic contributions.
Yes, thank you, speakers, for sharing your experience, what you are doing in your museums. That really tells to society that museums are platforms who speak about really many different topics, and can make can give a best practice how society do with crisis, and how we can make interpretation to our history, and how we look to our today's problems. So thank you very much for that. And we know that we need to do so many things, and We need to work together, sharing with all these best practice and tell more and more to society, to our politicians, that culture is not luxus, but culture is like we need breathe. We need culture like to eat. So this is what we need in everyday life, and culture can help make better future for all of us. So thank you, Henry, for moderating, and thank you, Maya, thank you, Lilian, and thank you, Martina, for sharing your great examples of your museums. And we will, after that, after this webinar, we will also publish all these records, so everyone can see and hear who perhaps didn't listen at the moment what you said. So thank you very much for this opportunity.